Welcome back to another episode of Tigs Bits. On the episode this week, JR the Handler, Chad Blasi, and myself kind of take a deep dive into Elvis Presley. Yeah, we talk about the king, baby. We've kind of teased that in a couple of episodes, but we talk a little bit more exclusively about him and kind of Colonel Tom Parker, Colonel Tom Parker and what JR the Handler do are very quite similar. You know, I mean, JR the Handler is the handler, if you will, for Justin Moore, and he's done that for John Party and all that, just like Colonel Tom Parker did for Elvis. Now, look, I'm not comparing JR the Handler to Colonel Tom Parker, not even in the slightest, no chance. So don't get anything confused there, because that is not the case. Not at all. But this is a fascinating episode. We dive into some of the things, a couple of things I didn't know. And then it leads its way on into, it finds its way to Waylon Jennings and some outlaw country. You know, I mean, the conversation's going to come all the way back around. I want to thank everybody for all of the support, the comments, the shares, all the new likes and subscriptions to the pages and all that. You can do us a favor too. Share this with your friends. Send them to wherever you're listening or watching this from. Send them a link. Hey, I think you may enjoy this podcast. Or they talk about music here and there, sports, all that good stuff. This is a good one. We're talking about the king, baby. Let's go. You bring up the Colonel Tom Parker, and I know we've talked in some of our text threads that you've got some thoughts on him and Elvis. So what are we thinking?
You know, the movie came out recently, and it's kind of different because I did it, you know, instead of watching it, then going and finding out the real story like you do with most things, or I have with most things. I've seen a movie and then have to go back and read the real story and then have to make disbelief of the movie I saw first that I thought was what really happened. You know, when you're a kid and you watch something, then you go back and read, oh, that was based on this, but this is what really happened, you know. Like I didn't read Harry Potter before I watched Harry Potter. I never even watched Harry Potter. But a lot of people always say, well, I read the book first, so it's hard to watch the movie. So that was kind of how the Elvis movie was for me. I've read enough books and, you know, watched enough other like hardcore real documentaries, fact-based documentaries.
You knew the story. You knew the full story before.
Yes, for the movie to be much more than just, you know, a loose thing that was for entertainment. But it was good. I mean, it opened up to a wide audience. I mean, it wasn't that. There was nothing that extreme in there, because who knows what the real relationships and what really happened in any of these stories you hear. Even if you've got both sides telling you the same thing, who really knows? You know,
yeah, sure. They probably don't even really know. I mean, dude,
you don't remember.
You've been in a very similar position, not quite with Elvis, but at that level, but you still are in a very similar position with superstars in music, same gig. So I would think that this would be something that would, you know, that would fascinate you, and you would have more of an insight into that than most people, because you know what goes on in the music industry.
Well, to a certain extent, for sure. But, you know, that's what I tell everybody, because, you know, when Justin watched it right after I did, he was, I can't believe they let him take advantage of him on these numbers and these deals and stuff. And I'm just like, dude, that was the Wild Wild West. This was the first time these kind of contracts and stuff were being in their infant stages, and laws on how to govern these things in court and who had what. I mean, it was, you know, it was a whole different game then. We have the structure we have now because had to go through those years of that kind of stuff. But yeah, you know, again, there's really no way to for certain know, but obviously and I can't remember if they hit on it during the movie because I only watched it once. I wish I would have watched it again before we talked tonight, but you know, the thing about it was he was an illegal immigrant that came over and worked in the carnival business at a young age, and worked his way up through that, and he got the nod of colonel from Louisiana governor.
Yeah, Jimmy Davis. Yeah, you are my sunshine.
He was in the music business, and he was a singer and a manager and stuff. But ended up being the governor of Louisiana. So somehow they did some shows together or something, and that's how he got the colonel tag. And And yeah, the deal on Elvis, I don't really remember how exactly they found each other on that, but the deal on Elvis, again, there wasn't a deal. It wasn't like there was an attorney there.
Yeah, there wasn't a playbook
representing both sides to do these things.
Right. There was no playbook. There was no one had ever reached that kind of stardom
exactly
ever in the history
the people
of
Elvis
the world.
looked up to. Yeah, and you couldn't see it if you did because television had just started. You know
right.
what I mean? So,
which is really what propelled all of that. Is
right.
that showed what visual medium would do right there. I mean, look at how crazy people in those numbers, even if you, not to get off topic for a second, but if you look back and you see numbers of like Super Bowls in the 80s and the 70s and World Series and some of the biggest events, the We Are the World deal, all that stuff, those numbers are just ludicrous. They're just pure insanity. Well, you had a lot more captive audience. Of course, we know what's happening now. It's all been diluted. There's so many ways you can consume every which thing. But still, for him to do that and completely change the world, and then the Beatles come after that, then Michael Jackson and so on, to take over those top reigns, it's incredible that's what happened, and that was the response to that particular medium.
Right. Well, it's to say, cause, like you said, it's because of television, because you're talking about rural America now. So in the early 50s, there was television in a lot of places, but not a rural America.
No.
Yeah, there wasn't even power in a lot of these places.
Right.
You know what I mean? So as that went on, Elvis, in the mid 50s, it was a lot more people had television. Then again, by the Beatles in the mid 60s, a lot more television. And then there was the thing to do, like everybody looks on their phones now. For 20 years, the thing was to have a television, even if it was black and white. You got one channel. Before that, it was the radio. But the visual thing kicked it into a whole nother overdrive. And you got to think, too, the guys he looked up to were these guys playing on Beale Street in Memphis and stuff. There wasn't like he didn't want to be like, I'm going to be like this, model my career after this person. There was not the stars he saw were that, and maybe some he heard on the Opry and stuff.
Yeah, he paved his own way and made his own style. It's fascinating how that all worked out. Obviously the guy could sing, he could play. There wasn't anything that he couldn't do. He had the charisma, he had the looks. There was nothing that Elvis Presley could not do. It's just eventually just couldn't kick the drugs there at the end. But even those stories kind of make sense as to what's happening. It's a lot like Prince and Michael Jackson, really more so than anything. Those are the two closest similarities I see with that. But man, freaking Elvis!
It's crazy. I was
it's tough.
I guess I'm aging myself here, but this lady I used to go to for daycare, Miss Clark's, and she was awesome. Miss Clark was great. And I remember, what year did Elvis die? Was it like 79?
77.
77.
Oh, 77.
Yep. So I remember I was 4, and I'd just become a big one. When you're 4, you become a big one at Miss Clark. She had a swimming pool, which you wouldn't see at a daycare nowadays, but you could get the swimming pool when you became a big one. I just become a big one, and it was so good. And I remember I went inside there. If you were ever hungry outside of like breakfast or lunch or whatever, she'd give you a ketchup sandwich, put a little ketchup on light bread, fold it in half, hand it to you. And I went there for a ketchup sandwich. And I remember it so vividly. She just found out while I was standing there that Elvis had died. And I've never, and like watch her break down, like, the fandom that he had with people. And it was so impressionable, upon me at that time. I remember going like, oh my God, what's wrong with Miss Clark? This is horrible. What's going on? And Elvis had just died. So I remember the day he died. I was a big one. but no, man, his impact was just that huge at that time, So
it was huge. It was huge.
That's awesome, Chad. I didn't realize you were that old.
I know. As I said, I just aged myself.
You really did.
That's funny.
He's been lying
but
all
yeah,
these damn
that
years.
was the set. Everybody, my mom and then my grandmother, they tell the story where they were in the car at this certain mile marker in Mississippi, driving home from the beach from Pascagoula or so, whatever it was, and they everybody remembered that. It's like
oh yeah,
JFK, MLK. There's some of those that were just like, oh boy, that's tough. D-Day, stuff like that. That says those dates that hit you, and it's like, man, those are all cultural things that everyone, like going back to where we're talking about rural America, knowing about it as well as the big cities, because I mean, you got to think it was in the 50s still. We think things like when we were kids, but we're not kids anymore. You got to think in like the 50s and stuff, it was really rural. There weren't even interstates and stuff. You're talking about like it wasn't nothing like we think of
rural.
today.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Outside
country.
Of the east
cities,
up here, and it's a couple.
Cities.
Even L.A. was tiny then and stuff, and San Francisco was pretty big. New Orleans was big, but yeah, there was just spots, and the rest was really pretty rural. And so once they got to television, that stuff. So I go back, say that to say, yeah, Elvis had no influences to look up to find out how to run his business or what he needed to be doing. So here comes this guy along, works it out. A terrible deal, 50-50 deal supposedly, but we could go down a chronological order and debunk some of this stuff, how it went down. But there's the story of when he played Ed Sullivan. I don't know if y'all have heard that story before of Ed Sullivan. They're working out the deal to have Elvis on, and they finally work it out, and he's only paid so much before. Say it was $10,000. Well, Colonel said 15. He said that's the most I've ever paid anybody, but let's do it. And Colonel said, okay, that's enough for that's enough for me. Now what we gonna pay the kid? So like he would make sure to get that kind of stuff, and and then the whole thing in Vegas is that made a lot of sense too. But the biggest thing was he couldn't, and they alluded to it some in that movie, as I remember. They couldn't travel international. It was basically because the Colonel couldn't be there. He was control freak. He didn't want anybody outside of Elvis being around him or putting any thoughts in his head or letting him know he didn't have a good deal and this kind of stuff. And Elvis really was loyal because, whether it was a good deal or a bad deal, it was a deal they made, and they were working out pretty good for both of them at the time.
And things were going great. He had plenty of Cadillacs to give away, and life was well.
Yeah, but there wasn't and then the hangar owners and the people who should have been watching out for him. That's when the for whatever reasons, didn't step in and make sure he was okay. But again, that wasn't a thing everybody knew about. Nobody ever witnessed that kind of thing really before him. It was drink yourself to death, or car wrecks and plane crashes and motorcycle wrecks and that kind of stuff. It really, he was. I'm remembering he was early on in that whole thing of the, sleeping pills and the different things for road maintenance. But it's easy to see how that is because, I mean, it's a thing to get up and go down as much as you have to. And him doing those back-to-backs, man, as big as Elvis was, he should have played every Saturday night anywhere he wanted to, the biggest place he could play anywhere in the world. And he would, but they just
sell them out, and that's that.
Again, I don't know what the motives and the money, and it just
seems like they ran him ragged, especially in the very beginning. When he was, and I mean, the Louisiana hayride wasn't an easy. It didn't sound like that was easy for anybody.
Yeah, it's completely wild, and I know Brantley. I've told you this, but so we got a local musician here, Duke Bardwell. Duke played with Elvis in '74 and '75 as bass guitar, and he had played with a band down here called Hubba Hubba. Now he sits in a lot with Dred Clampett. He's kind of the godfather of that band over here, and I actually saw him play about a month ago. He's 80 years old, dude. Sounds great, plays great. It's really kind of crazy. But they were doing a documentary with him, and it was called The King and I, and it was supposed to really get into some stuff. But like somewhere in the middle of the documentary, as they're working on it, it just kind of fell apart. So I don't know what happened to all this footage, and I want to find out. I've talked to him a few times on the side about it, but it seems like there was some rough stuff in there too, with at that stage of Elvis's career and just kind of how the state that he was in, it wasn't all, butterflies and all, but hey, he got his TCB gold necklace and, and
nice.
He can say he played with the King, and he was there.
No doubt.
But yeah, Duke's played with a lot of people. He's good friends with Kenny Loggins. He used to open up for Kenny Loggins. He was out in Los Angeles. That's actually where he hooked up with him. He's from Louisiana. Butch Hornsby is a guy down there that not a lot of people have heard of, but written a lot of great music and played a lot of great music. So he did a lot of stuff with him. But yeah, it's pretty cool. You got a guy that played with Elvis that lives around here.
Yeah,
that'd be a good one to hear stories, and you don't have as many of those as you would. Think how many people were like him that were brushed by fame and met so many people in their career, and if they could remember it and put it all together, the stories they have, like Rick Carter from Rolling
Yeah.
in the Hay, from Telluride. Rick, I know Rick's done some memoirs lately and done some things, but people like that. And luckily we've got him he's got it out. But think how many guys and girls along the times that have had success, whether it be regionally or locally or nationally, but end up running through and with all kinds of cool stories. A lot of them just get out of the business or don't remember or don't ever write down or somehow just no one's around recording it for them, kind of thing, or asking them to, I guess. But the more of that would be cool, especially now since it's easy, to get somebody down and let's record it,
Yeah, that I don't think that, and we're running out of time with some of these folks that we need to that we need to get with and get all the information, because life is fleeting. You have no idea, and I don't think that'll be an issue for any of these bands, groups, all of that, singers, whatever, that started in in 15, 20 years ago on, because all that stuff was in place. Even the 80s and stuff, there's some stuff, but to really live in those wild west days, as you say, get to go back. We need more stuff. There's not nearly enough.
No, and certainly now, since the social media age, because it's all recorded on Facebook or Instagram, everything everybody's done at bands starting out level, first getting their stuff going level, documenting it, that, a lot of them through that. But you just think about how many good local bands you've ever seen that you knew someone you like, that guy used to play with so-and-so. And and that's what you may know him for, but then turns out if you talk to him, he's done way more than that. He wrote this and helped produce this. Yeah. He was so-and-so's roommate when he lived out in LA or something. And you're like, what? And it's a lot more than he was just the bass player in this band that was kind of big. Like, no, he had a lot of brushes with
100%
cool
he did,
stuff,
man. And he wrote some great music too. Yep, for sure.
But no, overall, I thought the Elvis movie was good. We'll wrap it back to Elvis and the Colonel. I thought the Elvis movie was good. The Colonel, like I said, it's so complicated. That's not a bad. Just go with what they said, but no, it's deeper than that. But if it intrigues you some, there's a ton of great documentaries and real, true documentaries, not movie documentaries, and books. We'll drop a couple that I can think of that would. But even in Elvis is so big, I could be reading a Charlie Daniels book and there's an Elvis reference, or I could be reading a Skinner book and there's an Elvis reference, or I could be reading a Frank Sinatra book and there's an Elvis. It doesn't matter what book you read. Elvis probably is going to get a nod in there at some point. When and the Beatles, he's about like the Beatles. It's like where along the path did you run into one of those two? If you got so lucky. I
love the story of when the Beatles went to Graceland and met Elvis, and just it obviously seems like Elvis was a little weird at times too. He's kind of
100%.
But let's face facts, he didn't grow up very normal. He just
that's what I'm saying.
He got thrust into that deal. How do you act normal after that?
What are you going off of? He didn't have a TV in his house growing up. What are you going off of? You just here we are. This is what we're doing.
And then he just shot all of them that he got. He just for some reason he just loved to shoot them. Okay, here's a TV. Bam! Okay, Elvis shot another TV tonight. That's.
Have y'all toured Graceland?
I have not.
I have when I was a kid, and I've also since the movie came out. After I saw the movie, I've gone into Elvis deep dives for years. I love Elvis.
Yep.
But some of that stuff I didn't know, not a whole lot, but there was I can't think of a story or two, but there were a couple of things that I didn't know that were in the movie. So I went a little bit deeper into that and all that. But I watched a few virtual tours, and I remember going with a kid because it hasn't changed.
No, it's probably been 10 years or so since I went last. Actually, a friend of mine from high school. When he got married, we ended up in Memphis, went to a ball game, and went to Graceland just to check it out because we're Elvis fans. Put the little headset on and went through it. And I've probably been literally like 12 times. We used to go there all the time from Jackson. We just go up on Christmas and go see the lights and go the tour.
Oh, I bet
the plane.
back
when it was okay, it was, we used to go there and eat across the street. I mean, it wasn't that bad in like the early 90s, but
yeah,
it was on its way. It's rough now, but yeah, it's so neat to walk through there still. All the rooms, everything. I mean, it brings you to it. But I would say, yeah, that's a good start. But definitely go dig more if you want to know how crazy the deals were and the sad part of it. But the good things that were, man, you got a lot of good music out of him. The TV thing would have, who knows what would have happened if he would have done that, or the movie thing, if he would have done something, a real movie, instead of like those B movies.
Yeah.
But that's part of the legacy too.
He
did.
That's the whole deal.
He kind of tarnished it without tarnishing it, made it work somehow.
Yeah, made comebacks, and I think this is maybe a controversial statement, but I mean, I'm just going to say it. I think next to Garth Brooks, he may be the best cover singer of all time.
A lot of them that era didn't write all their own stuff. You had songwriters and stuff. That's like,
sure.
You go back before their era when it was Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong. Before that, go back to that stuff. A lot of them didn't write that stuff. There was writers, duo writers from New York that they wrote songs. Yeah. And everybody played each other's songs. And a lot of modern songs that are hits they're not new. They're old songs redone 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
But you're right though. Yeah, didn't write. One of my favorite country music singers of all time, Charlie Pride. I don't think he wrote any songs.
Wow.
Did
Elvis write any songs? Did he actually?
He got songwriting credit for a bunch of them.
Yeah, he got a lot of credit for a lot of them, but I wonder if he actually
maybe
really wrote them.
Maybe some.
Because he could definitely play and he could definitely sing, and it's really not fair if you can just nail all three, like
play,
John
sing,
Mayer.
Dance.
Yeah, there's those guys that it's just like, that's just not fair. And write hits. Come on.
I'm sure he could act for real if he wanted to,
Oh yeah, I think he would have been a great actor, like you said, if he got a hell of a lot better script, and it wasn't just let's appeal to all the girls in the world and do another beach movie from Hawaii, and with some really really crappy songs. Yeah,
I always heard he painted his hair black like that because he was a big fan of Tony Curtis.
Huh. That's interesting.
That's what I've always heard.
Huh.
Well, it worked.
Johnny Cash did the same thing.
Somebody out there in the internet world watching and listening to this podcast on the World Wide Web debunked that and hit Tig up hashtag.
Let's see what's going on there.
And
I was getting my hair cut. I was getting my hair cut in Nashville, and this older lady was cutting my hair, and she said she used to do Johnny Cash's hair. She said she'd dye his hair jet black, then take a silver, like a Sharpie type thing, and they'd put in like the silver little streaks in there with some. Really? It wasn't a Sharpie. I forgot what she called it at the time. Like a silver pen, and put the silver streaks in. But he'd want it jet black and then painted it in with a little pen.
That's how they wanted it. Yeah.
But
man.
Anyway, just thinking about the jet black hair there.
That's that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
It is.
Down Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
I can't believe we visited for 6 or 7 hours and doing all this, and this is the first time that Johnny Cash's name has come up. That's insane.
Cash.
Oh man. I got to meet his son at walking out of the Opry 3 or 4 years ago. We went to a show, and who's it? Daly and Vincent, the bluegrass folks. They actually Marty Stewart introduced them that night, and they got offered or accepted to be a member of the Opry, which was cool to get to see that. I've been to the Opry, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, but to actually get to see what I've seen others do, that was really cool. And then he was there. I can't remember what's his first name? Johnny Cash's son.
John Carter.
Yeah, John Carter Cash. He was John Carter was there with his wife, and man, she had a beautiful voice too. He sang, it was awesome. Well, walking out afterwards, we're just walking to the parking lot. It's kind of hilly right there. And then I just looked to my right or left. I don't remember. I'm like, well, that's him. And I just went up, took a quick picture with him, and shook his hand and rolled on. But it was like, man, I just felt like I just met Johnny Cash, because he's a big old dude. He had to probably was the same size and all as Johnny Cash. He's tall.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool.
Wow,
Very
cool.
talented cat for sure. But like that Johnny Cash, it's crazy, the Cash and Elvis connections,
Yeah.
Sun Records,
Right. It all goes back to there. I mean, that Sam
Who's
Phillips.
going to name, which one of you guys is going to name the other two members of the $1 Million Quartet?
It ain't gonna
Cannot
be me
help you here,
because I can't-
JR. You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to
The $1
inform
Million
us.
Quartet, Sam Phillips, Sun Studios, Memphis, Tennessee. We had Elvis Presley. We had Johnny Cash. We had Jerry Lee Lewis, the Killer.
Jerry Lee Lewis, of
Jerry
course.
Lee
I mean,
Lewis
yeah.
was
we
the
had
devil.
Mr. Blue Suede Shoes himself, Carl Perkins, the original Blue Suede
That's
Shoes.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Carl Perkins was the one all those British guys wanted to be, because he was the best guitar player in the bunch. Everybody wanted to be Carl Perkins. He's Jackson, Tennessee, right between Memphis and Nashville. But that was the $1 Million Quartet out of Sun Records back in the day. They got those. There's a couple of recordings of them all in there together just working out stuff when they were all young.
Isn't that crazy? Just the amount
Just a
of
little
talent
building.
in one room. Yeah. I've
The
seen
building
it
wasn't as
still.
big as my studio. Probably.
Right.
That's the inspiration for Andy Laird playing that piano like he does, tickling them ivories so well. It's that Jerry Lee Lewis action,
Yeah.
Andy Laird can flat out.
Hey, that'd be a
jam.
fun guy to have on here sometime. That's another one. How many times he brushed around
Absolutely
fame?
has. Absolutely has.
Oh man, he would be fun. He and I would cut up. We'd have to give about the first 15 minutes of me and Andy laughing and cutting up, doing our ribbon. Oh man, he's my buddy. That's funny.
I love Andy.
catching up.
It's funny. I always tell Hal, I'm like, Hal, dude, you're like one of my best friends in the world. I was like, I'll be honest with you, your dad's way cooler than you are,
funny.
He's a character.
Good stuff. Yeah, we're talking about it. I know we're telling inside jokes to outside folks, but we're talking about our friend, one of Blasi and my fraternity brothers, Hal Laird. His dad, Andy Laird, is a real good piano player and has played many bands and done many cool things with people over the years. And that'd be fun to get him on it sometime. I think we should get a couple of those guys on and we'll have our $100 quartet here with another guest. There'll be four of us.
That's
$100
it.
quartet, not the $1 Million Quartet.
That's it, dude. Yeah, I would just and swap some old stories. I promise you, I could sit back and just enjoy it.
Well, like I told you on ours, that's the best when you can get if somebody gets going and one of those guys get to telling stories, just let them go, and
Ease
man,
back.
hopefully they'll tell some story about wrestling.
An alligator.
Wrestling Eddie Money over a cheeseburger or something. I don't know. Or argue somebody backstage catering because they got the last muffin or something. I don't know. Who knows? Or who you just never know. But all that stuff's interesting here. And now that we can get it recorded and we know we'll have it, and that'll be good for history in general.
It needs to be. All that type of stuff needs to be archived. I mean, it really and truly does. So, I mean, I think that this should be a part of the responsibility of Tigs Bits is to help keep some of that music and some of those stories and those things alive that they have to stay alive. I mean, they just absolutely do. Yeah, we've got to get him on. I doubt Andy Laird remembers jamming with me, but but we did have one hell of a night at Hal's house one night. We got into a slap off with Bo. I don't know if you know Bo.
Slap off.
Yeah. And, how that kind of goes. It got a little extreme. But somehow or another, Andy was there, and then his brother, which I can't remember his name again, and anyhow.
I think we did this last show.
We did. We've done this. Yeah, we did this last. Can't remember the kid's
And
damn
I've done
name.
it again
But,
because you create this.
It's okay.
And I know him
And,
well.
This,
but go
this
ahead.
Probably,
Yeah.
Whose brother?
probably
Hal's
ain't staying
brother.
in there.
What's his name?
Hal's brother.
Shit.
Dude, I know he did this to me last time.
He
He's got
jam
a
a
little
guitar.
Taylor.
That's it.
Taylor.
Thank you.
Taylor.
Thank you. Good Lord, it's awful.
He can. he could jam. You know, he's a pretty good little guitar player.
He's a good bit younger, and I kept thinking, brother. Oh yeah, that ain't his kid. Hell, anyway, I kept Taylor. Yeah, that's his younger.
Yep, and he's got another brother named Chase. So I do know this, Hal.
Okay, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
yeah. So we're at Hal's house, and they there, and they kind of went into a jam and started playing. You know, they had done that at my house before too. I mean, we used to get the cops called on us a lot, and all. It's, you know, good old days. But man, I did about a 12 or 14 minute version of, you know, don't give me no lies. Keep your hands to yourself.
Keep your hands to Georgia Satellites.
Yeah, there it is, the Georgia Satellites. I don't think I sang a correct lyric in the whole 14 minutes. Not one. I mean, you know, except for the main verse, the chorus. I hit that, and then everything else, it was just like rambling, running out. But and there could have been things involved, but I'll tell you, man, it felt right. It was about.
I love it. As long as you were feeling it, man. That's all you conveyed the feeling. That's all that matters.
Was I feeling it?
Somebody was tuned in with you, and they were feeling exactly what you were putting out, brother. I promise you.
I guarantee you
I was
they
there,
were.
and it was a great jam session. You know,
you know how many?
I don't even think I realized.
You know how many videos
you
you're gonna see of. You know how many videos you're going to see of JR singing karaoke or singing a song? Zero, because JR can't remember the words to nothing. You think I'd remember? I can't remember the names of songs. I've sang a million times in my head. I can sing along, and I can sing. I get you a verse or a chorus here and there, but I cannot remember all the words to any song. I bet. I don't think I can. I don't think I could if
not even your boy Justin Moore's songs.
It would take a lot of concentration. Nothing. I mean, even the songs, like I said, even like Hank Jr. songs, I just can't.
Hey, when those words disappear in that music, it gets really difficult, you know?
I'm in the zone, man. I'm in the feeling, and I got nobody, you know, it's on me.
What do we do next?
You know, I don't remember. I don't know.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I've always kind of been one of those guys that it's the music that hits me first before the lyrics. And sure, there are songs that I love because of their lyrics and all of that and the meaning of the songs. But ultimately, if it doesn't sound right to me, if it doesn't make me tap my feet or feel it inside or convey some type of an emotion, then I'm moving on. I don't care about it. So that's how I have to hear it first anyhow. So I get it. I don't know half the lyrics anyhow. I still look at bands that I'm a huge fan of, like 311 and Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff like that. And I'll have it playing on this screen in front of me on Spotify or whatever, and I'll turn it on to the lyrics and just reading the lyrics while it's going. It's like, well, I'll be damned. I've been
saying that wrong forever.
For 25 years.
It's the wrong word.
Wow. Yeah. I was like, okay, well, that's just part of it, though. Yeah, dude, I'm with you. I can understand that. That's why that's why I would think some singers are like that, because I've been to concerts where I know they're looking at a teleprompter or whatever whatever you call, which would be 1,000,000% necessary for me as well. I wouldn't want to go out on that stage without one. Just for backup. I may not need it, but I just wanted to be there.
Absolutely. You know, Justin doesn't use one. A few times for certain songs we do in the encore, we might have to print some lyrics out to something that he just in same thing, just in case he gets lost, because he doesn't do it every night. But I can remember when we opened for George Jones one time at City Fest in Montgomery. I stayed around and watched the show side stage, and Jones had a teleprompter in front of him, and I'm thinking, I can't believe George Jones, he's singing these songs so many. And then he stopped loving her today, really, and he's got the teleprompter going in front of him. He stopped loving her today, and I'm thinking, hi. But I mean, you know, why not? You got a bunch of songs to remember.
That's true.
Oh, you say it all the time, you know. I know some,
and if you do it so many times over and over too, you would think. And I've never confirmed this with any of artist guys I know or gals, but you'd think eventually too, you're just kind of going through the motion. If you've done it for 20 years and singing the song, you probably have time in your mind to think about the grocery list and what time your flight is the next day.
Right. Yeah.
What, what you got to do on Tuesday. Okay, back. All right, I got to do this. All right, thank y'all. You know,
we're in the first or second verse.
Not
here.
that they don't care. And not to do that every night, but I can see certain times for certain songs.
It's just human nature.
If you've done it so many times that you could probably just put it in autopilot for a second. You kind of, oh gosh, I'm still here.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that happening.
Oh yeah,
it's like a Johnny Cash song. No, not Johnny Cash. I'm sorry, Waylon Jennings. So that Waylon Jennings song, don't you think it's Outlaw Bits done got out of hand? For probably
Yeah.
20 years, I thought he was singing, "Don't You Think That Outlaw Business Done Got Out of Hand," and I've just sung it with band. And I was like, oh, it's bit, not business, like. It's funny though, but you screaming that at the top of your lungs, you think everybody else is singing the same thing.
Right.
Waylon's my man, dude. He's my favorite.
Oh, dude.
Oh, man.
And I love that
it's
song
just,
too.
It's just his guitar, man. It's the way he hits, can make it do some of those funky sounds that they do. I mean, it's a signature sound. That's Waylon Jennings when you hear it.
Yep.
There's no doubt.
Phaser.
And Jamie Johnson is a bass player. Was one of Waylon's bass players. There's a huge Waylon Jennings influence with Jamie Johnson because he has that Waylon sound.
Yeah, for sure. It's got its mixture of all that stuff. But he always says between Jennings and Jones.
That's it.
It's very true.
Song, But no, Jamie's steel player was Hank's longtime steel player, Cowboy Eddie Long, and he's still in the band. But Waylon and Jamie, huge connection, buddies, that kind of stuff. Jamie actually owns one of Waylon's, I believe it's a Cadillac or a Lincoln. He's got one of Waylon's last couple cars he had. And Nikki Mitchell Foundation was Waylon's longtime, if it was his manager or assistant or something like that, managed some of his stuff. And Jamie ended up working with her and he and Randy Hauser and some of those guys do a benefit golf tournament every year in her name to raise money for the foundation and for the what the disease that she passed from and stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch of deep ties in there with that. And Jamie's kind of a historian. He owns, he's got one of the Smokey and the Bandit cars. His tour bus is black and the trailer is painted like the one in Smokey and the Bandit with the,
is it?
The stagecoach on the side. Yeah, just like
nice.
Like Jerry Reed's rig was. It had the stagecoach. In the black truck, that's how Jamie's truck is on the road.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love Jamie. I'm a huge Jamie is our modern day contribution to the legend scene, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
And there's several that are going to be there one day, but Jamie just he let it be known early on.
He came out with a vengeance. He's going to just do it. He's going to do it his way, and he's one of the best singers you're ever going to hear. And it is. Yeah,
and he got in there right in time, and all the guys that were the legends that were still around at that point all embraced him, and it was awesome. I'm a big fan, and he's a friend, so it's
he seems like a real nice like what you see is what you get. He's a nice fella.
When I know if I told that on here before, but when I was with Wayne Mills, Jamie would open for Wayne, and the club owners wouldn't even want to have an opener and the kind of deal. So I knew him from early on, and we had the CD in the back of the truck, and I always knew it was good. But big influence from those guys. And Waylon, Waylon's got that sound and those songs, and a lot of his were covers too that other people had done. But his sound and his voice, just was perfect for what he was trying to get done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The era we know. Then if you go back though, there was the clean cut Waylon way before that.
Yeah.
That was a different type of songs, and they were all singing those standard
the
songs
standards.
back then.
That's right.
Along
with Willie, and I'm glad that they broke out of that because that is not where they needed to be. It was not where they needed to be.
Well, that was part of the, but that's part of the growing process to get to figure out to piss you off enough to get to where you want to go, and that kind of wouldn't be who they are without that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's what I tell a lot of young people, acts and stuff I see, or they didn't show up to town all wild-eyed and crazy and all the crazy stories you hear about how outlaw they were and all. They didn't show up that way. They got that way once they could, you know what I mean? Don't show up all drugs and crazy and telling everybody to kiss your ass, because that ain't gonna work, you know what I mean? That just, not unless you got some substance. They figured it out, but they didn't show up to the party like that. You know what I mean? Once they could, they did. And thank goodness they did. Once they went back and started doing some of their own stuff, using their own bands, their own producers and stuff. And Wanted, the Outlaws, was Waylon, Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glazier, and Tom Paul and Jesse Coulter. That was the first $1 million platinum selling record. That's the first country record ever sell 1 million copies.
Right.
I did not know that. Yeah.
And that was one of the first ones out of that bunch. And then, all the stuff we know them for more or less came after that. And then from that well sprung, along with the Southern rock influence of that time, sprung a Hank Jr., who also did not start off being the Hank Jr. we know now. Obviously he had a Elvis type. He's one of in that bunch almost with the, having to start from early age and have so much fame and notoriety. But all that stuff combined to make, turn his career to what it did for the stuff we know him from. All the stuff pre, Hank Jr. and Friends it was not the stuff that we all know him for. But great records, but just a whole different thing. But that's that evolution, of each artist, But none of them started that way.
You just
can't really.
What about old Hank 3?
He's great.
Yeah.
Great entertainer.
I remember watching some of those documentaries about Jesco White, the dancing outlaw. He'd show up at some of Hank 3 shows and sit over there and just do his little West Virginia little step he did there, whatever he called his dancing deal.
Oh yeah, dance.
The wonderful whites of
West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Yeah, that is a crazy show.
That is so good.
Check that
I can't
out.
get enough of it.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time.
There's the original PBS. The original PBS one is gold, but then when they made the reboots, years later, were
the age
wow.
You've
But
been
the
cooking
original
a little bit
is
slimy.
the original is the one to go to. The original PBS.
I didn't know there was an original. I had no idea.
You don't know about?
No.
Dude, this is a West Virginia PBS channel. Did this in like the early '80s, or
wow.
maybe it was early '90s. But they have there's old footage of them with Mamie and Jesco, and then when they're young, their dad's still there and all that. That's where all this came from. Is that?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Go to YouTube and watch original Jesco White, and you could tell it's grainy.
Okay.
That's where it all sprang from. And then when they read the thing, I'm like, oh, I can't believe they're letting everybody know about this, because it was one of those things like there was a VCR tape. When I first got on the road, somebody would have on a VCR tape or a CD or a DVD and put it in the bus to watch. Usually it was a tape because it was old. It was like got passed around. Somebody like, y'all ever seen that? That was something we'd stay up watch late at night on tour buses early on with some stuff like that. The footage of that, it was a PBS thing. But yeah, if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, check that out. But yeah, Hank 3, saw him play several shows, hung out with him a few times over the years, like the Exit Inn in Nashville and some of that stuff. I was always a huge fan. He had a couple records there in the early 2000s, late 90s that were really good. Yeah. But yeah, he did the punk rock stuff too. He went out to LA and did the punk rock. Then he came back and did the country, and then he meshed it together. And
it all culminated at the Rattlesnake Rodeo, and he closed out a Sunday weekend of the Rattlesnake Rodeo. Yeah, we had Hank 3 there in Opp, Alabama one year. So
wow,
it was great.